The snow burned worse than fire when it hit her skin, and Violet Winters realized with distant horror that she might actually die here on the street. Her former employer, slammed the glass door of the boutique so hard the holiday wreath rattled against it. Through the frosted window, Violet could see Mrs. Chen turning the lock with sharp, angry movements, her face twisted with the kind of fury that came from someone who'd been waiting for an excuse. The accusation still rang in Violet's ears. Theft. A diamond bracelet missing from inventory, and somehow it was Violet's fault. Never mind that she'd never stolen anything in her 22 years of life. Never mind that she'd worked overtime without complaint for 3 months straight. The December wind tore through her thin work blouse and pencil skirt. She'd left her coat inside, her purse too. Everything she needed to get home, to survive, locked away behind that door with a woman who'd already called her a liar and a criminal in front of the evening customers. Violet pushed herself up from where she'd landed in the snowbank, her palms scraped raw from catching herself. The street was nearly empty, the downtown shopping district cleared out early because of the storm warnings. Her teeth chattered so violently she bit her tongue, tasted blood. She had no phone, no money, and her apartment was 45 minutes away by bus. A bus she couldn't take even if she made it to the stop. She stumbled forward, wrapping her arms around herself uselessly. The cold was already making her stupid, her thoughts coming slow and confused. She needed to find help. A police station? But what would she tell them? That her boss threw her out? They'd tell her it was a civil matter, send her away. The snow fell heavier now, thick flakes that clung to her eyelashes and hair. Her feet were going numb in her canvas sneakers. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore. Violet didn't realize she was crying until the tears froze on her cheeks. She made it 3 blocks before her legs stopped working properly. The buildings here were older, renovated warehouses turned into expensive lofts she'd never be able to afford. Streetlights cast orange pools on the white ground, and between them stretched long shadows that seemed to move. One shadow detached itself from the rest and became a man. Violet's failing mind registered details in fractured pieces. Tall, impossibly tall, wearing a long black coat that didn't move in the wind. White hair, so pale it glowed against the darkness, and his face, beautiful and terrible and wrong in ways she couldn't name, sharp-boned and ageless. She tried to run. Her legs folded under her instead, and she went down hard on the icy sidewalk. The man was suddenly there, crouching beside her, and she hadn't seen him move. That should have frightened her more, but the cold had stolen her capacity for fear. All she could do was stare into eyes that were dark red, like garnets, like blood held up to light. "You're freezing to death," he said, and his voice was accented with something old and European, each word precisely formed. He sounded surprised, almost curious. "Pee, please," Violet managed through her shaking. "Help." He tilted his head, studying her with those impossible eyes. Then he shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The weight of it was incredible, and it held warmth like nothing she'd ever felt, as if he'd been standing in front of a fire. The relief made her sob. "What happened?" he asked. "My bee-boss threw me out. Violet's words tangled on her frozen tongue. "I need to get home." "Where is home?" She tried to remember her address, but the numbers wouldn't come. Fear spiked through her numbness. That was bad, wasn't it, not being able to remember? The man made a decision. He stood, then bent and lifted her as if she weighed nothing at all, cradling her against his chest. Violet wanted to protest, to say she didn't know him, but the warmth of his body was unnatural and perfect, and she was so cold she thought her bones might shatter. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," he said, and started walking. Violet's consciousness came and went. She was aware of movement, of the snow stopping as they went indoors somewhere. Voices spoke in languages she didn't understand. Warmth surrounded her, and hands stripped away her wet clothes with clinical efficiency. She was dressed in something soft, placed in a bed with blankets piled on top of her. When she finally surfaced fully, she was in a room that belonged in a castle. The bed she lay in had 4 posts of dark carved wood, and the canopy above her was deep burgundy velvet. The walls were stone, actual stone, but covered with tapestries that looked medieval and probably priceless. A fire burned in a massive fireplace, and the furniture was all antique, the kind museums kept behind velvet ropes. Violet sat up slowly. Her body ached, but the dangerous cold was gone. She was wearing a nightgown of ivory silk that definitely wasn't hers, and her hair had been dried. Someone had bandaged her scraped palms. The door opened, and a woman entered carrying a tray. She was beautiful in an unsettling way, with the same white hair and pale skin as the man who'd found Violet. She wore modern clothes, black pants, and a fitted sweater, but moved with the grace of a dancer or a predator. "You're awake," the woman said, setting the tray on a table beside the bed. "Good." Vladislav was concerned. "Vladislav? The king who carried you out of the snow like a lost kitten." The woman's smile showed too many teeth. "I'm Katerina. I've been tasked with making sure you don't die," which would apparently displease him. Violet's mind was working again, putting together the impossible details. The appearance of these people, their unnatural grace and beauty, the way the man, Vladislav, had moved without seeming to walk, his strength, the castle hidden somehow in the middle of the city. "You're vampires," she whispered. Katerina's smile widened. "Clever girl." "Yes, and before you panic, you're under the king's protection now, which means you're perfectly safe. No one here will harm you." "The king?" Violet repeated. He's a king. Vampire king of the Eastern Territories, lord of the Night Court, keeper of the blood accords." Katerina rattled off the titles with casual ease. "Also insufferably noble when the mood strikes him, apparently. He brought you to his own residence." Violet looked around the opulent room with new understanding. "This is his home?" "One of them. Beneath the city, a little pocket of the old world preserved." Katerina gestured to the tray. "Eat. Mortal food, nothing strange. You need to recover your strength." The tray held soup that smelled incredible, fresh bread, cheese, and fruit that looked too perfect to be natural. Violet's stomach cramped with sudden hunger. She hadn't eaten since her lunch break, hours before Mrs. Chen had accused her. "Why did he help me?" Violet asked, reaching for the soup. Katerina's expression shifted into something thoughtful. "That's an excellent question. Vladislav doesn't typically concern himself with humans. We have rules about interference, but he carried you in himself, ordered his best rooms prepared, and told me personally to ensure your care." She leaned against the bedpost, studying Violet like a puzzle. "What happened to you?" "Between spoonfuls of soup that tasted better than anything had a right to," Violet explained. Her job at the boutique, Mrs. Chen's increasing hostility over the past weeks, the missing bracelet, the accusation, being thrown into the snow with nothing. "Your employer violated several human laws," Katerina observed. "Unlawful termination, false accusation, reckless endangerment." "I can't afford a lawyer," Violet said quietly, "and it would be my word against hers. She has money, reputation. I'm nobody. You're under the protection of the Vampire King now. You're hardly nobody." The door opened again, and Vladislav entered. Violet's breath caught. In the warm light of the room, he was even more striking than he'd been in the street. He wore a black shirt and pants that looked expensively tailored, and his white hair fell past his shoulders in a way that should have looked strange but instead seemed regal. His face was sharp-featured and impossibly handsome, ageless in the way of old paintings, and those red eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her heart race. "You're recovered," he said. It wasn't a question. "Thanks to you," Violet managed. "You saved my life." "Yes." He said it simply, with no false modesty. "I did." Katerina pushed off from the bedpost. "I'll leave you two to talk. Try not to overwhelm her, Vlad. She's had a difficult night." She swept out with a knowing look that made Violet's cheeks heat. Vladislav moved to stand near the fire, his profile sharp against the flames. "You were thrown out to die," he said, "over a theft you didn't commit." "How do you know I didn't commit it?" He turned those red eyes on her. "I am very old, Violet Winters. I have seen every kind of human that exists. You don't have the heart of a thief." He paused. "And I can hear your heartbeat. It doesn't lie." The way he said her name made something flutter in her chest. "You know who I am. Your identification was in your clothes. I had someone investigate your situation while you slept." He moved closer, and Violet had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Your employer has been stealing from her own inventory for months and blaming it on her employees. You're the third person she's dismissed this way." Anger flared hot through Violet. "And she gets away with it. Until now." Vladislav's smile was sharp and cold and entirely lacking in mercy. "I've had my people contact the authorities with evidence. She'll be arrested by morning." Violet stared at him. "You did that for me? Why?" "Because she tried to kill you." He said it like it was obvious. "Throwing you into the snow without your coat, your belongings, any way to get home or call for help, she knew what she was doing. And I don't tolerate attempted murder in my territory." Your territory. The city? The city, yes, and 500 miles in every direction. He studied her face. You're afraid of me, but not as much as you should be. Should I be afraid? I'm a vampire. Violet, I've lived for over 800 years. I've killed men and women and other vampires. I've waged wars and ended bloodlines. He moved closer still until she had to press back into the pillows to maintain distance. But I won't hurt you. You have my word, and my word is absolute. Why? She asked again, because it didn't make sense. Why me? Something flickered in those red eyes. I don't know yet, but when I saw you dying in the snow, I felt something I haven't felt in centuries. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her bandaged hand with careful fingers. Concern. For a stranger. For a human. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. Unacceptable. That I made you concerned? That someone tried to end your life over greed and cruelty. His hand tightened just slightly on hers. You'll stay here until you've recovered fully, and then we'll discuss what happens next. I need to find a new job, Violet said. A new place to work. I can't go back to my apartment. I couldn't afford it, even with the job, and now you'll work for me. She blinked. What? I have need of a personal assistant. Someone to handle correspondence with the human world, manage appearances, coordinate with my business holdings. He released her hand and stepped back. The position pays well. Room and board included, here in my residence. You're offering me a job? Just like that? I'm offering you a position in my household, yes. You're educated, I checked, you have experience in customer service, sales, management, you're capable. His eyes held hers. And I want you close. That last part sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with cold. Why? I told you, I don't know yet. He turned toward the door. Think about it. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, I'll show you what your life could be here. He left before she could respond, the door closing with a soft click. Violet sat in the enormous bed, surrounded by luxury she'd never imagined, in a vampire's castle beneath the city, and tried to process what had just happened. Her cruel employer had thrown her into the snow to die. A vampire king had saved her, brought her home, and was now offering her a job and a place in his household. It should have been terrifying. She should have been planning her escape. Instead, she found herself thinking about the way Vladislav had looked at her, with something between curiosity and hunger and something softer she couldn't name. The way his hand had felt on hers, cool but not cold, strong but gentle. The certainty in his voice when he had said she was under his protection. She finished the food on the tray, exhaustion pulling at her. The bed was impossibly comfortable and the room was warm and safe. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she could breathe. Tomorrow she'd think about vampires and jobs and what it meant that a king wanted her close. Tonight she let herself sleep. Morning came with no sunlight because there were no windows. Violet woke to the gentle sound of the fire and found fresh clothes laid out on a chair designer labels in exactly her size. Black pants that fit perfectly, a soft burgundy sweater, even undergarments and shoes that looked like they'd been made for her. She dressed, feeling strange and out of place in clothes that probably cost more than a month's rent. Someone had left a note on the table. Come down when you're ready. Turn left, follow the hall to the stairs, then follow your instincts. Okay. Violet opened the door to find a corridor of stone and tapestries lit by ornate sconces that held actual candles. The flames didn't flicker. She turned left and found the stairs, a wide sweep of marble that descended into a grand foyer. The castle, because it really was a castle, hidden impossibly beneath the modern city, was a study in contrasts. Ancient architecture met modern convenience. Suits of armor stood beside contemporary art. Chandeliers dripping with crystals hung over furniture that mixed periods and styles with confident disregard for convention. She followed voices to a massive dining hall. Vladislav sat at the head of a long table reading something on a tablet. Katerina was there too, along with 3 other vampires Violet didn't recognize, all with that same white hair and pale skin, all beautiful and unsettling. They stopped talking when she entered, and 5 pairs of eyes turned to her. 4 sets were red like Vladislav's. 1 pair was gold. Good morning, Vladislav said, gesturing to the chair at his right hand. Sit, we've prepared breakfast. Violet moved to the chair, aware of every vampire gaze tracking her. The table held food that could have come from any upscale brunch place: eggs and bacon, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that smelled like heaven. My inner court, Vladislav said, gesturing around the table. You met Katerina. This is Dmitri, my second in command, Anastasia, who handles our legal affairs, and Lucian, master of the treasury. Each vampire nodded as they were introduced. Dmitri was broad-shouldered and looked like he could break someone in half. Anastasia had delicate features and a sharp intelligence in her eyes. Lucian looked young despite the ancient gaze, and he was the one with gold eyes instead of red. A human at court, Dmitri said, his voice a deep rumble. This is unprecedented. Many things I do are unprecedented, Vladislav replied calmly. Violet, eat. We won't bite. His smile was full of dark humor, not without permission at least. Violet picked up her fork, trying to ignore the absurdity of eating breakfast with vampires. Do you need to eat? She asked. Or is it just blood? Just blood for sustenance, Katerina said. But we can eat human food for pleasure. We just do it rarely. How does that work? The blood, I mean. Violet knew she probably shouldn't ask, but if she was going to be here, she needed to understand. We have human donors, Anastasia explained. Volunteers who are well compensated and carefully monitored. We take only what we need, never enough to harm. There are strict laws. The blood accords, Violet said, remembering Katerina's list of titles. Exactly. Vladislav leaned back in his chair, studying her. We're not monsters, despite what your stories say. We have rules, honor codes, laws that govern our behavior. Breaking them has consequences. What kind of consequences? Death, usually. He said it matter-of-factly. We police our own kind rigorously. A vampire who kills a human without cause is executed. One who turns a human without permission faces the same fate. Turning. Violet's hand tightened on her fork. Making a vampire, it requires draining someone to the point of death, then giving them vampire blood. It's not something done lightly. There are quotas, permissions required from the ruling vampire of a territory. His eyes held hers. You're in no danger of being turned without your consent. I give you my word. The weight of his promise settled over her like a warm blanket. She believed him, she realized. This vampire king, this ancient predator, she trusted that he meant what he said. I'll take the job, she said. Dmitri's eyebrows rose. Katerina grinned. Vladislav's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes that looked like satisfaction. Excellent, he said. After breakfast, Katerina will show you your new quarters, your formal rooms. The guest room was temporary. Then Anastasia will help you retrieve your belongings from your old apartment and terminate your lease. I can't afford to break the lease, Violet started. You work for the Vampire King now, Vladislav said. Money is no longer a concern for you. Anastasia will handle it. The rest of breakfast passed in a blur of conversation. The vampires talked about their business dealings. Apparently, they owned half the city's real estate and had investments across the globe and their politics. Violet learned there were 7 vampire kings and queens across the world, each ruling a territory, and they met once every decade to renew the accords that governed their kind. The next meeting is in 6 months, Lucian said, his gold eyes sharp. In Vienna. You'll need to attend, Vladislav. I know. Vladislav's jaw tightened just slightly. And I'll need a human liaison for the public events, someone who can navigate mortal society and represent the court. He was looking at Violet when he said it. You want me to go to Vienna? She asked. To represent your court? If you're willing. You'd have time to prepare, to learn what you need to know. He paused. I don't make demands of my employees, Violet. I make requests. You can refuse. But the way he looked at her said he very much hoped she wouldn't. I'll do it, she said, and watched his shoulders relax. After breakfast, Katerina led her through the castle's winding corridors. The place was enormous, a labyrinth of rooms and halls that seemed to exist outside normal space. Katerina explained that vampire magic warped reality, creating spaces larger than they should be, hidden from human eyes. We're technically under the city, Katerina said, but also not. We exist in the spaces between, anchored to the mortal world but separate. Only vampires and those we allow can find the entrances. She stopped at a door carved with intricate designs. These are your rooms. Vladislav insisted you have the suite closest to his own quarters. The rooms beyond were stunning. A bedroom with a 4-poster bed, even larger than the guest rooms. A sitting area with bookshelves and comfortable chairs. A bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool and a shower with more jets than seemed necessary. Everything was decorated in deep jewel tones, burgundy and forest green and midnight blue, and the furniture was a mix of antique and modern that somehow worked perfectly. "This is too much," Violet said. "Vladislav doesn't do anything by halves." Katerina moved to the closet and opened it to reveal clothes in Violet's size, ranging from casual to formal. "He had these prepared last night after you accepted. He was certain you would. Confident. He's a king. Confidence is part of the job description." Katerina's expression softened. "He's not usually like this, you know. Interested in humans. He keeps his distance, maintains the boundaries, but with you..." She shook her head. "I've served him for 300 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you this morning." Violet's heart did something complicated in her chest. "I don't understand why." "Neither does he. That's what makes it interesting." Katerina grinned. "Come on, let's go get your things. Anastasia's waiting and she's terrifying when she's impatient." Retrieving her belongings was surreal. Anastasia drove them in a black Mercedes that was probably worth more than Violet would make in a decade, and she handled Violet's landlord with the kind of cold efficiency that had the man stammering and agreeing to waive all fees. Violet packed her meager possessions, clothes, books, a few photographs, and realized how little she'd accumulated in 22 years. "You'll build a new life now," Anastasia said as if reading her thoughts. "Better than the one you had." Back at the castle, Violet spent the afternoon learning her new duties. She'd be managing Vladislav's correspondence with human businesses and government contacts, maintaining the polite fiction that he was a reclusive billionaire rather than an immortal vampire. She'd handle scheduling, coordinate with his human staff in the businesses he owned, and serve as the bridge between the vampire world and the mortal one. "It's a crucial position," Dmitri told her when he came to check on her progress. "We maintain our secrecy through careful management of our public faces. You'll be responsible for preserving that illusion." "No pressure," Violet muttered. Dimitri's laugh was surprisingly warm. "You can handle it. Vladislav doesn't make mistakes in judgment." By evening, Violet's head was spinning with information. She'd been given access to encrypted files, email accounts, and a phone that Lucian assured her was completely secure. She'd learned that Vladislav owned 3 major corporations, 2 hotels, and significant shares in various tech companies. On paper, he was one of the richest men in the country. In reality, he's one of the richest creatures on Earth, Lucian had said with a slight smile. 800 years is a long time to accumulate wealth. Dinner was a quieter affair, just Vladislav and Violet in a smaller dining room. He'd dismissed the others, saying he wanted to talk to her alone. Violet tried not to feel nervous about that. "You're adjusting well," he said, watching her eat. He had a wine glass in front of him, but it held something dark red that definitely wasn't wine. "Everyone's been kind," Violet said. "I expected..." "Expected what? Monsters? Maybe, I don't know." She met his eyes. "You're not what I thought vampires would be like. What did you think we'd be like? More evil, I guess, less..." She gestured around the elegant room, at him in his perfectly tailored clothes. "Civilized." "We're apex predators," Vladislav said calmly. "We hunt, we feed, we kill when necessary, but we're also intelligent beings who've built societies and cultures over thousands of years. We have art, music, literature. We fall in love, feel loyalty, protect what's ours." His gaze intensified. "We're not so different from humans in our way, just more dangerous. And you're their king. One of 7, yes, I rule the Eastern Territories, everything from the Mississippi to the Atlantic, north to Canada, south to the Gulf. Other vampires defer to me, follow my laws, respect my authority." He paused. "I've held this position for 600 years. I earned it through strength and strategy. You fought for it? I killed for it." He said it without shame or apology. "The previous king was cruel and careless. He exposed our kind, put us all at risk. I challenged him, and I won." His fingers traced the rim of his glass. "I've been a good king, fair but firm. I protect my territory and my people. And now you're protecting me." "Yes. Why?" she asked again, because she still didn't understand. Vladislav was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and moved to stand beside her chair. He reached out and touched her hair, letting the strands slip through his fingers like he was testing their reality. "When I saw you in the snow," he said quietly, "dying because of another human's cruelty, I felt rage. Pure rage, the kind I haven't felt in centuries. And when I touched you, when I picked you up," He paused. Your warmth, your life. I wanted to preserve it. I wanted to keep you safe. I wanted... He met her eyes. I still don't have words for what I wanted, but I knew I couldn't let you die. Violet's breath caught. That's not normal for you. No, I've walked past dying humans before. It's not my place to interfere with mortal affairs, but you... His hand moved from her hair to her cheek, cool fingers against warm skin. Something about you called to me, still does. She should have pulled away. This was her employer, a vampire, a king, someone who'd lived for 8 centuries and could kill her with a thought. But instead, she leaned into his touch, her eyes drifting close. I feel it too, she whispered. This pull. Like I'm supposed to be here with you. It doesn't make sense. No, Vladislav agreed. It doesn't, but I've learned to trust my instincts. They've kept me alive this long. His thumb brushed across her lips. I want to know you, Violet Winters. I want to understand what it is about you that makes me feel alive again after so many years of simply existing. She opened her eyes to find his face close to hers, those red eyes burning with an intensity that should have been frightening, but instead made her feel wanted in a way she never had before. I'm not special, she said. I'm just, you're whatever I say you are, he interrupted, and I say you're extraordinary. I say you're worth protecting, worth knowing, worth... He stopped himself, drawing back slightly. I'm moving too fast. You've been here one day. I'm sorry. Don't be. Violet caught his hand before he could pull away completely. I want to know you too. All of this is insane and impossible, but I don't want to run from it. His fingers tightened on hers. Then we have time. All the time we need. The following weeks fell into a strange, wonderful rhythm. Violet learned her new position, handling correspondence and meetings with the ease of someone who'd finally found work that challenged her. She was good at it. She discovered good at navigating the complex web of vampire politics and human business. Good at presenting the right face to the right people. The inner court accepted her presence with varying degrees of warmth. Katerina became something like a friend, teaching her about vampire culture and history. Dmitri was gruff but protective, treating her like a younger sister. Anastasia remained coolly professional, but helped her understand the legal complexities of vampire-human relations. Lucian was distant, but always polite, his gold eyes watching her with an assessment she couldn't quite read. And Vladislav was a constant presence, drawing her into his world with careful patience. He showed her the depths of the castle, the libraries full of books in dozens of languages, some so old they were written on vellum and papyrus. He taught her about vampire history, the rise and fall of their kind through human ages. He introduced her to other vampires who came to court, always keeping her at his side, his hand often at the small of her back in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. They had dinner together every night, just the two of them. He asked about her life, her dreams, the things she wanted. She asked about his centuries, the things he'd seen and done. He spoke of ancient Rome and medieval France, of wars and plagues and the slow march of human progress. He spoke of the loneliness of immortality, the way everyone he'd ever cared for had died while he remained unchanged. Don't you want to die? Violet asked one night. After so long? Sometimes, he admitted. But suicide is forbidden by our laws, and I've never been quite desperate enough to break them. There's always been something to interest me, some reason to continue, a new invention, a war to prevent, a threat to my people. He looked at her. And now, there's you. I'm not a reason to live for 800 years. You're a reason to be curious about what comes next. His hand found hers across the table, their fingers interlacing like they'd been made to fit together. I want to see what you become, Violet. I want to watch you grow into your power, not a vampire power, but your own strength. I want to be there for it. She was falling in love with him, she realized. With this ancient vampire king who looked at her like she was precious, who protected her like she mattered, who listened when she spoke like her words were worth more than gold. It should have been impossible. They were different species, different worlds, but none of that seemed to matter when he smiled at her, rare and genuine, or when he touched her hand like he was afraid she might disappear. The first real complication came 6 weeks into her new life. A vampire arrived at court unannounced, demanding audience with Vladislav. His name was Constantine, and he was massive and scarred and radiated the kind of violence that made Violet's instincts scream danger. My king, Constantine said, bowing slightly. His eyes went to Violet, standing at Vladislav's right hand, as had become her place. I see the rumors are true. You keep a human pet now. Violet felt Vladislav go still beside her, a predator preparing to strike. I keep a valued member of my household, Vladislav said, his voice colder than Violet had ever heard it. And you'll address her with respect, or you'll leave my court missing your tongue. Constantine's eyes widened slightly. Then he bowed again, deeper. My apologies, my king. I meant no offense to you or your associate. What do you want, Constantine? The Western Territory vampires are moving against the Accords. Marcus is raising an army. Constantine straightened. He plans to challenge the current structure, declare himself High King over all territories. The room went silent. Dmitri moved to Vladislav's other side, his hand on the sword he wore. Katerina appeared in the doorway, her usual playfulness replaced by lethal focus. Marcus is a fool if he thinks the other kings and queens will accept his rule, Vladislav said. He has support. 3 of the 7 are with him. They say the Accords are outdated, that we should stop hiding from humans and take our rightful place as their rulers. Constantine's expression was grim. They say you're weak, my king, that you've gone soft, playing at human business and keeping mortals in your household. Vladislav's laugh was sharp and utterly without humor. They're welcome to test that theory. I'll send them back in pieces. There will be war, Constantine said, unless you can unite the remaining kings and queens against Marcus. You're the oldest, my king, the strongest. If anyone can stop this, it's you. When? The challenge will be made at the Vienna meeting in 4 months. Marcus plans to kill you there, in front of the gathered court, and claim your territory as his own. Violet's blood ran cold. She looked at Vladislav, but his expression was calm, almost bored. Let him try, Vladislav said. I've killed challengers before. I'll kill him too. After Constantine left, Violet followed Vladislav to his private study. He poured himself a drink, actual alcohol this time, not blood, and stood staring at the fire. You're worried, Violet said. I'm annoyed. Marcus has been a problem for decades. I should have dealt with him earlier. He took a drink. But this complicates things. Vienna. Yes, it will be dangerous now. Not just politics, but actual combat. I can't bring you into that. Violet moved to stand in front of him. You said I'd be your liaison, that you needed me there. That was before I knew it would be a war zone. His free hand came up to cup her face. I won't risk you. You're going to be in danger. You'll be fighting. Her voice caught. What if something happens to you? I've survived 800 years of challengers and assassins. I'll survive this. But you don't know that. Not for certain. Violet put her hands on his chest, feeling the cool solidity of him. If you're going into danger, I want to be there. I want to help. Violet, I'm not fragile, she said fiercely. I'm not helpless. You saved me from dying in the snow, yes, but I'm strong enough to stand with you now. Let me. Vladislav stared at her, something fierce and possessive flaring in his red eyes. Then he set down his glass and pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her with careful strength. You're precious, he said into her hair, the most precious thing I've had in centuries. The thought of you being hurt because of my conflicts? I'm already in your conflicts. I'm part of your household. If Marcus wants to challenge you, he'll see me as a target, whether I'm in Vienna or not. She pulled back to look at him. I'm safer with you than anywhere else. You know that. He did. She could see it in his face, the reluctant acceptance. You'll stay close to me, always. You'll follow every security protocol, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. He kissed her then, and it was everything she'd been hoping for since the first time he touched her. His lips were cool, but soft, and he kissed her like she was precious, like she might break. His hand cradled the back of her head, and she melted against him, her human warmth meeting his vampire coolness in a contrast that felt right. When he pulled back, his eyes were darker, pupils blown wide. I want you, he said roughly. More than I've wanted anything in so long I can't remember, but I need you to be sure. I'm sure, Violet whispered. I've been sure for weeks. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she felt his control slip just slightly. His hand tightened in her hair, his other arm pulling her flush against him. She could feel the strength in him, the predator lurking under the gentleman, and it thrilled her. Not here, he said, pulling back with visible effort. Not like this. You deserve better than a rough tumble in my study. I don't care where I do. He traced her kiss-swollen lips with his thumb. When I take you to bed, Violet Winters, it will be in my chambers, in my bed, and I'll take my time showing you exactly what you mean to me. But not tonight, not when my mind is full of war and violence. You deserve better than that. It was probably the most romantic rejection she'd ever received. Violet nodded, even as her body protested. Okay, soon, he promised. After I've dealt with Marcus and his ambitions, after I've secured your safety, then I'll make you mine properly. The way he said mine sent shivers through her. The next 4 months were a whirlwind of preparation. Vladislav trained for combat with Dmitri, their sparring sessions so fast and violent that Violet could barely track the movements. Anastasia worked on securing alliances with the other kings and queens, reaching out through careful diplomatic channels. Lucian shored up their finances and prepared for the economic impact of potential war. Katerina trained the vampire soldiers of the court, turning them into a deadly fighting force, and Violet learned. She studied vampire politics and history with the intensity that surprised even herself. She practiced the subtle art of court diplomacy, learning when to speak and when to stay silent, how to read power dynamics and navigate deadly social situations. Anastasia taught her self-defense, basic moves that might give her a chance if something went wrong. You're mortal, Anastasia said, watching Violet practice a knife defense. You'll never match a vampire for speed or strength, but you can be smart and you can be unexpected. Use that. At night, Violet and Vladislav still had dinner together, still talked for hours. But now there was an undercurrent of tension, of unfinished business between them. He touched her more freely now, a hand at her waist, fingers threading through her hair, casual kisses pressed to her temple or cheek. But he never pushed for more, never took her to his chambers like he'd promised. I won't cloud my judgment with pleasure before a battle, he explained one night when she asked. After Vienna, after it's done, then I'll claim you properly. I promise. What if something happens to you? She asked quietly. Then you'll be provided for. I've arranged it with Dmitri. He'll protect you, ensure you're safe and comfortable. Vladislav pulled her close. But nothing will happen to me. I promise you that too. She wanted to believe him. She tried to believe him, but the fear sat cold in her stomach as the Vienna trip approached. They traveled with an entourage. Vladislav, his inner court, 20 vampire soldiers, and Violet. The trip itself was surreal, a private jet that flew at night, arriving in Vienna just after sunset. They were met by a caravan of cars that took them to a castle on the outskirts of the city where the vampire gathering would take place. The castle was ancient and enormous, all Gothic spires and stone walls. Inside, it was filled with vampires from around the world. Violet had never seen so many of them in one place, hundreds of white-haired, pale-skinned immortals, all dressed in their finest, all radiating power and danger. She stayed close to Vladislav, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. He was dressed formally in a black suit that looked like it had been tailored by someone who understood exactly how to make him look like the deadly king he was. Every vampire they passed bowed slightly, acknowledging his status. Vladislav, a woman's voice called. A vampire approached, regal and beautiful, with white hair piled in an elaborate style and a gown that belonged in a museum. How good to see you. Elisabetta, Vladislav returned, inclining his head. You look well, as do you, and this must be your human. Elisabetta's red eyes studied Violet with interest. The one Marcus is so upset about. Violet Winters, my personal assistant. Violet, this is Elisabetta, vampire queen of the Southern Territories. Violet executed the slight bow she'd been taught. Your Majesty. So polite. Elisabetta smiled. Don't worry, child. I'm on your king's side in this mess. Marcus is an upstart fool, and I'll be happy to watch Vladislav tear him apart. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Vladislav said mildly. Oh, it will. Marcus has been bragging about what he'll do to you, to your household. Elisabetta's eyes flickered to Violet. Keep her close, Vladislav. He'll target her to get to you. After Elisabetta left, Violet felt Vladislav's arm tighten on hers. I won't let anything happen to you. I know. The formal gathering began an hour later. The vampires assembled in a massive throne room, 7 ornate chairs on a raised dais for the kings and queens. Vladislav took his place, and Violet stood just behind his throne, the position of a trusted advisor. The other rulers had similar arrangements, vampires they trusted standing witness. Marcus made his entrance like he thought he was arriving at his own coronation. He was tall and broad, with white hair cut military short and a scarred face that spoke of violence. His red eyes swept the room with contempt. "My fellow rulers," he said, his voice carrying, "I've called you here to discuss the future of our kind." "You've called us here?" An ancient vampire on one of the other thrones laughed. "Boy, I was attending these gatherings when your maker's maker was still mortal." "You don't call anyone." Marcus's jaw tightened. "The Accords are failing us. We hide like rats from mortals who should be our prey. We pretend to be human, playing at their games, following their rules." His eyes locked on Vladislav. "Some of us even keep humans as pets, forgetting what we are." "What we are," Vladislav said calmly, "is civilized beings capable of coexisting with mortals without unnecessary slaughter. What you're suggesting is a return to the Dark Ages, when we were hunted and killed because we couldn't control ourselves." "We're apex predators," Marcus snarled. "We should rule them." "We do rule them, you idiot." Another queen spoke up, her voice dripping with disdain. "We rule their economies, their governments, their infrastructure. We just do it from the shadows, where we're safe. Your way would lead to war, one we might not win. Humans have nuclear weapons now, Marcus. They could wipe us out if they felt sufficiently threatened." The argument raged for hours. 3 kings supported Marcus' younger vampires, all under 300 years old, all full of the arrogance that came from not having lived through the Inquisitions and witch hunts. 4 rulers stood with Vladislav the Old Ones, who remembered what it was like to be hunted. Finally, Marcus stood. "Then I challenge you, Vladislav. Right of combat, your territory against mine. Winner takes both, and the loser's supporters fall in line." The room went silent. "You're challenging me for my territory?" Vladislav said softly. "You understand what that means? Fight to the death. Old law, ancient right." Marcus smiled. "Unless you're too weak now, too softened by your pet human." Vladislav rose from his throne with the grace of a hunting cat. "I accept your challenge. When?" "Now." The throne room transformed. Vampires moved back, creating a wide circle. Dmitri appeared at Violet's side, pulling her back to a safe distance. Katerina and Anastasia flanked her, their bodies positioned protectively. "Watch," Katerina whispered. "You need to see what he really is." Vladislav removed his jacket, handing it to Lucian. He rolled up his sleeves with methodical calm. Marcus did the same, cracking his knuckles like a brawler preparing for a bar fight. They began. Violet had seen Vladislav spar with Dmitri, had thought she understood vampire combat. She'd been wrong. This was something else entirely. Violence so fast and brutal it barely looked real. Marcus attacked with raw power, trying to overwhelm with strength. Vladislav fought like water, flowing around attacks, striking from unexpected angles. Blood flew. Marcus landed a hit that would have killed a human, his fist crashing into Vladislav's ribs with a crack of breaking bone. Vladislav didn't even slow. He pivoted and struck Marcus's throat, a blow that sent the challenger staggering. They fought for 20 minutes that felt like hours. The throne room echoed with the sounds of flesh hitting flesh, bones breaking, the snarls of ancient predators. Violet watched in horror and awe as Vladislav systematically dismantled his opponent, each strike precise and devastating. Finally, Vladislav had Marcus on the ground, his hand wrapped around the challenger's throat. "Yield," he said quietly. "Never," Marcus spat. "Then die." Vladislav tore Marcus's throat out with his bare hand. Blood sprayed across the stone floor, and Marcus's eyes went wide with shock. He tried to speak, but only gurgling sounds emerged. Within seconds, he stopped moving, his body going still. Dead, truly dead. Vladislav stood, covered in blood, his own and Marcus's. He looked around the room, his red eyes meeting every vampire's gaze. "Anyone else want to challenge me? Want to call me weak? Want to suggest I'm unfit to rule?" Silence. Then one by one, every vampire in the room knelt. Even the 3 kings who'd supported Marcus bent their knees, acknowledging Vladislav's dominance. "The Accords stand," Vladislav said. "We continue as we have been carefully, intelligently, without drawing human attention. Is that understood?" A chorus of, "Yes, my king," echoed through the room. Vladislav's eyes found Violet. Even across the distance, even covered in blood and violence, his gaze softened when it landed on her. "We're leaving," he announced. "This gathering is over." The castle provided rooms for them, and Dmitri hustled Violet toward them while Vladislav dealt with the political aftermath. She was shaking, she realized, adrenaline and fear and relief all tangled together. "He's fine," Dmitri said gruffly. "Vampires heal fast. Those broken ribs are probably already mended." "He killed him," Violet whispered. "Marcus challenged him. Deathmatch, no other option." Dmitri stopped at a door. "Your room. Stay here. Vladislav will come when he can." Violet paced the room for an hour, unable to sit still. When the door finally opened, she spun around. Vladislav stood there, clean now, the blood washed away. He'd changed clothes, and if not for the slight tension around his eyes, she wouldn't have known he'd just killed someone. "Are you afraid of me now?" he asked quietly. Violet crossed the room in 3 strides and threw her arms around him. "No, I was so worried. When he hit you, I thought, I'm fine. I told you I'd survive." His arms came around her, holding her close. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "Don't be. Katerina was right. I needed to see what you really are." She pulled back to look at him. "You're a killer, a warrior, a king. And her voice caught, "I love you anyway, maybe because of it. You're exactly who you need to be." Something in Vladislav's expression cracked. He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. "You love me. Yes, I'm an idiot. I'm probably completely insane, but yes, I love you." Tears stung her eyes. "I've loved you for weeks. Watching you tonight, being so afraid you'd be hurt, I couldn't deny it anymore." "Violet." He said her name like a prayer. Then he was kissing her, desperate and possessive, all his careful control shattered. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He lifted her easily, and she wrapped her legs around his waist. He carried her to the bed, laying her down with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity of his kisses. His hands roamed her body, learning her curves, and she arched into his touch. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I've loved you since I carried you out of the snow. Maybe before that in some life I don't remember. I love you, and I want you, and I need you to be mine." "I am yours," Violet gasped as his mouth moved to her throat. "I've been yours since you saved me." He made love to her with the same focused intensity he brought to everything else, learning what made her gasp, what made her moan, what drove her wild. He was careful of his strength, but demanding in his passion, and Violet surrendered to him completely, trusting him with her body the way she'd already trusted him with her heart. Afterward, she lay curled against his chest, his cool skin against her flushed warmth. His fingers traced idle patterns on her shoulder. "I never thought I'd feel this again," he said quietly. "This kind of connection. I thought I'd lost the capacity for it centuries ago." "What changed?" "You. Everything about you." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "When I saw you dying in the snow, something woke up in me that I thought was long dead. The ability to care, to want to protect, to feel like life might mean something more than just endless existence." "I'm going to die someday," Violet said, facing the reality they'd both been avoiding. "I'm human. I'll age and I'll die, and you'll still be here." "I know." His arms tightened around her. "I've thought about it. I've thought about offering you immortality, about turning you, but that's not a decision I can make for you, and I won't pressure you." "Would you want me to be a vampire?" "I want you to be happy. If that means staying human, living a human lifespan, then I'll treasure every moment we have. And if you choose immortality, I'll guide you through it and spend eternity grateful." He tilted her face up to his. "The choice is yours, Violet. It will always be yours." She kissed him softly. "I don't know yet. Can I have time to decide?" "All the time you need." They flew back to the castle the next night, and life resumed its rhythm, but different now, deeper. Violet moved into Vladislav's chambers, sharing his massive bed, waking up wrapped in his arms. They worked together during the day, her in her role as his assistant, him managing his territory and responsibilities. At night, they were simply Violet and Vladislav, a human woman and vampire king who'd found something precious in each other. Months passed. Violet grew more confident in her role, more comfortable in the vampire world. She made friends among the court vampires, earned their respect through her competence and her refusal to be intimidated. She traveled with Vladislav when he had business, stayed by his side through political negotiations and business deals, and she thought about immortality. The question haunted her. What would it be like to be a vampire, to give up sunlight, to need blood, to watch everyone she'd ever known grow old and die? But also to have centuries with Vladislav, to never have to leave him, to become powerful enough to truly stand at his side rather than always being the fragile human he had to protect. One night, a year after he'd saved her from the snow, Violet found Vladislav in his study. He looked up from his work, smiled that rare smile he reserved for her. "I want to be a vampire," she said. His expression went very still. "Are you certain?" "Yes, I've thought about it for months. I've weighed every option, and She moved to stand in front of his desk. "I want forever with you, Vladislav. I want to be strong enough to fight beside you, to be a true partner instead of someone you're always protecting. I want to see the centuries with you. I want it all." He stood, moving around the desk to take her hands. "It's not an easy transition. The change is painful, and after you'll need to learn control, learn to manage the hunger. Some vampires never adjust. I'm not most vampires, and I'll have you to teach me." She squeezed his hands. "I'm ready. Make me yours. Completely." Vladislav studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We'll do it properly. I'll call the court, make it official. You'll become the first human I've turned in 500 years. My consort, my equal." "Equal?" Violet blinked. "I thought turned vampires were weaker." "You'll be weaker than me at first, yes, but I'll give you my blood, my direct blood. That makes you powerful from the start, and with training, you'll become formidable." His smile was sharp. A vampire queen needs to be able to defend herself and her territory. "Queen? Did you think I'd turn you and keep you as just an assistant?" He pulled her close. "You're my chosen one, Violet, the one I love. In vampire culture, that makes you my consort, my queen. You'll rule beside me." The ceremony happened 3 nights later. The full court assembled in the throne room. Every vampire of Vladislav's territory gathered to witness. Violet stood before them in a gown of deep burgundy, feeling surprisingly calm. Vladislav addressed the court, explaining his choice, declaring Violet as his chosen consort. No vampire protested. If anything, they looked approving their king, the ancient and powerful Vladislav, had finally found someone worthy of his affection. The actual turning was intimate despite the audience. Vladislav had explained the process. He'd drain her to the point of death, then give her his blood. Her body would die and be reborn as vampire. "It will hurt," he'd warned her, "but I'll be with you through all of it." He was gentle as he bent her back over his arm, cradling her like something precious. His lips touched her throat, and she felt the pierce of his fangs' pain, but not unbearable. Then the draining began, and she understood what he'd meant. It felt like being unmade, her life flowing out of her. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. She felt cold, so cold, colder than the snow had been that night he found her. Her heartbeat slowed, stuttered. Then Vladislav's wrist was at her lips, and he was telling her to drink. She did, tasting copper and power, feeling his blood burn through her dying body like fire. Her heart gave one final beat and stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. No breath, no heartbeat, no life. Then everything exploded into sensation. Her senses expanded 1,000-fold. She could hear every heartbeat in the room, the human servants, smell the stone and tapestries and blood. She could feel the magic in the air, the power that bound the vampires together, and she could feel Vladislav's presence like a sun in her awareness, bright and burning and absolutely central to her existence. She opened her eyes to find them looking at a world transformed. Everything was sharper, clearer, more. And when she looked at Vladislav, she saw him truly, for the first time, the ancient power coiled in him, the strength and will that had kept him alive for 8 centuries. "Welcome to immortality," he said softly. The first months of vampirism were hard. Violet had to learn control, had to manage the hunger that could overwhelm her if she wasn't careful. Vladislav taught her, patient and thorough, showing her how to feed from donors without harming them, how to fight, how to use her new speed and strength. She trained with Dmitri, who pushed her hard but fairly. She studied vampire magic with Katerina, learning to sense and manipulate the power that now flowed through her. She worked with Anastasia on vampire law, understanding her new role as queen, and every night she fell into Vladislav's arms, their connection deeper now that she was vampire. She could feel what he felt, sense his presence, even when he was far away. The blood bond between them was absolute, marking her as his and him as hers. 2 years after he'd found her dying in the snow, Violet stood beside Vladislav in the throne room, wearing a crown of silver and rubies. They were hosting a gathering of regional vampires, and she'd just finished negotiating a complex treaty that would prevent conflict between two feuding bloodlines. She was good at this, she discovered. Good at being a queen, at mediating disputes, at commanding respect. The vampires of Vladislav's territory had accepted her fully, and visitors from other territories treated her with the deference due to her position. After the last vampire had left, Vladislav pulled her into his arms. "You were magnificent tonight. I learned from the best." She smiled up at him. "Did you ever imagine, that night you found me, that this is where we'd end up? No, I thought I was saving a dying human. I had no idea I was saving my future queen. My love." He kissed her softly. "Best decision I've made in 800 years. Only 800? What about before that?" "Before that, I was mostly making mistakes." He grinned, rare and beautiful. "But everything led me to that street corner, to that moment when I saw you, so I can't regret any of it." Violet thought about the woman she'd been, lonely, struggling, trapped in a life that was slowly crushing her spirit. She thought about Mrs. Chen throwing her into the snow, an act of cruelty that should have ended her life. Instead, it had given her everything. A home, a purpose, love, and an eternity to explore it all. "Thank you," she said, "for saving me, for loving me, for giving me forever." "Thank you for making forever worth living," Vladislav replied. He swept her up in his arms, carrying her toward their chambers. "Now come. We have an eternity ahead of us, but I want to start by showing you exactly how much I love you." Violet laughed, the sound echoing through the castle that was now her home, surrounded by vampires who were now her family, held by the king who was now and always would be her everything. She'd been thrown into the snow to die. Instead, she'd found life eternal, dangerous, beautiful, and absolutely perfect. The castle settled into silence as its king and queen disappeared into their private rooms, the guards taking their posts, the servants completing their tasks. Another night in the vampire court, another chapter in a love story that would span centuries. And somewhere in the city above, snow began to fall again, soft and white and cold. But in the depths below, in the warm halls of vampire royalty, Violet Winters, now Violet Ivanov, vampire queen, was exactly where she belonged, in the arms of the male who'd saved her and made her his own. Forever had never looked so bright.